mean so much to me. The fun and the love and the care. I felt that I really was needed. I felt that I had to be there.
This video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon! I've fallen and I can't get up. When the channel had signed off on the Nickelodeon Studios project, Nickelodeon was mainly known for their children's game shows. Double Dare, Finders Keepers, Make the Grade, Think Fast, shows that were relatively simple, cheap, and quick to produce. Having a central studio space to make their game shows was a good investment. But as the Florida construction went underway, Nickelodeon's ambitions started to grow bigger. The channel had wrapped up the 1980s with Hey Dude, their first original sitcom, and it was a success, followed soon after with the production of Salute Your Shorts. Nickelodeon was finding themselves getting into the sitcom business. Their goals were shifting. But both of these shows were pretty elaborate. 2 single-camera sitcoms shot on location out in nature with an ensemble cast. They looked great, and they were fun as heck, but they weren't easy. They weren't network-style sitcoms. Your soundstage-based, multi-camera, laugh-track style of sitcoms. Those would certainly be more economical to produce, if Nickelodeon was going to pivot to sitcoms at all, but only economical with a centralized studio space. And well, wouldn't you know it, we have a studio space right here. And I guess we don't just have to produce game shows. But if Nickelodeon was going to do this, they weren't going to half-ass it. Whatever they made had to be funny, with a charismatic lead, and had to be very, very 90s. And well, they certainly succeeded in that. Premiering on Nickelodeon on March 23rd, 1991, this is Clarissa Explains It All.
Clarissa explains...
Me, Clarissa. First of all, I can deal with just about anything. Ferg face, worms, Mom's tofu sundaes. Even when I panic, it's cool panic. May I be excused to freak out? I'm not allowed to drive until I'm old enough to get my license. Parents are such sticklers for the law. And the 95,000 Christmas cards? Well, I can explain.
Clarissa Explains It All, every Sunday at 6:30, 5:30 Central.
On Nickelodeon.
13-year-old Clarissa Darling, played by Melissa Joan Hart, has a style all her own. She wears cool outfits with clashing patterns and flashy accessories, programs her own computer games, and has a little pet alligator named Elvis. She loves They Might Be Giants and Pearl Jam. She can't decide if she wants to be a Formula One racer or an oyster diver when she grows up, and she has a crush on the local weatherman. She's also our guide through life, breaking the fourth wall to address us directly to discuss all matters growing up.
Hey, everything looks different when you change your POV. You know, point of view. It's what makes a 6th grader look like a big shot when you're in kindergarten, but just a pipsqueak once you hit junior high. Whoever wants stuff to look totally new, just shift your POV. Whoa! Okay, I'm back. But am I really back, or am I still in the same place and everything else is back? Hey, things change, and you just have to change your POV if you want to keep up with them.
Her parents are supportive, if a little odd themselves. Her father, Marshall, played by Joe O'Connor, is an architect known for making buildings that look like household objects and food. He does his best to be involved in Clarissa's life, but he can't help being just a bit of a square.
Dad, how would you have felt if your dad showed up to your school wearing some ridiculous outfit?
Oh, sport, my dad was different. I mean, he was so much older. Older than me, and, well, he was so square. Oh, I see. I guess I hoped our relationship was different.
Clarissa's mother, Janet, played by Elizabeth Hess, is an educator at the local children's museum, an environmentalist, and an absolute nut for healthy food, subjecting the Darling household to various tofu and eggplant combinations. She tries to be the voice of reason in the house, but just as often gets caught up in the wrong ideas.
It's really gonna be fun, Clarissa. There's gonna be cool, groovy, funky activities with all the newest music at the campfire.
You know, Mom, I'm really into Nirvana.
Nirvana? I didn't know you were interested in Buddhism, Clarissa.
And finally, there's Clarissa's younger brother, Ferguson, played by Jason Zimbler, an antagonizing and stuffy young man, heavily invested in get-rich-quick schemes and appearing above his middle-class means.
You're looking at the new vice president of the Dan Quayle fan club.
You've got to be kidding.
You can call me Mr. Vice President.
Ferguson, I'm surprised at you. You let someone else be the president of your club?
There is no president, only a vice president. We have a rule that no one can have office higher than the person of whom we are a fan.
Rounding out the ensemble is Clarissa's best friend, Sam, played by Sean O'Neill, a scruffy young man who always shows up unannounced by setting up a ladder and climbing in through Clarissa's window. Sam offers Clarissa someone to vent to when being a young adult gets especially hard.
Since when are you interested in doing things the normal way?
Since my meeting with Mrs. Cheesebrow.
Again? Haven't you met with her enough?
She's made me her special case.
Uh-oh. Maybe I'm a special case of guilt by association. I'm supposed to meet with her next week.
Well, you better get normal fast if you don't want to be forced to join the Glee Club.
An episode of Clarissa Explains It All usually involves a pretty standard growing up issue of the week, like getting your first job, dealing with a crush, being embarrassed by your parents, having your bike stolen, etc., etc. Clarissa will then work the problem by discussing it with you, the viewer, offering up her own wacky solutions with the help of colorful on-screen graphics, and occasionally programming her own computer game based on the issue.
If my blind date is really bad, I just have to fight back. See? Take that, 8-man. Stand back, broccoli head. See you later, slob dude.
Clarissa Explains It All comes to us from the mind of Mitchell Kriegman, a man who already had quite the expansive and varied career. After earning a bachelor's degree in literature at Bennington College in Bennington, Vermont in 1974, Kriegman began doing stage work, writing for magazines, creating telephone-based museum pieces, and then found a home doing video art, founding a group called the Directors Workshop in the late 1970s. He became a grant-funded resident artist for WNET, the PBS affiliate of New York City, where he produced original comedy sketches. Of the stuff I could find, Kriegman's early work seemed to be built around goofy domestic scenes. A man thinks there's a ghost in his house, but it's actually just his wife. A couple try to work out how their evening went wrong. A man returns home for a family dinner, and the rest of the family just ignore him completely.
Here's Meg, she's great. Hey Meg, say hi to my friend. I guess we gotta set another plate, right? He's in here, take a look. Here, I don't know. Oh, look at that. This is Zach. Zach is great. Pretty special kid, huh? He's my nephew. God, Zach. Hey, wait, what are you doing, Zach?
How are those carrots coming, Zachary?
I found a magazine interview of Kriegman's from 1981, and you can tell just how much of Clarissa's DNA was being developed in his early work, a mix of familial situations and fourth wall breaking. One of my favorite story structures is talking directly to the camera, as if it were a confidant, and saying thus to the viewer that I have a particular problem or find myself caught in a particular situation. Then by the addition of certain visual clues, bits of evidence that I, as the narrator, don't seem to be aware of, the viewer is let in on more of the story. The form is like the TV commercials where the housewife talks directly to the camera, but the rest of her family seated at the breakfast table don't know they're in a commercial. Only my tapes are not attempting to sell anything, they are of a more personal nature. While Kriegman didn't work on Cube, Pinwheel, or most of Nickelodeon's first decade, he was very much of that generation, cut from the same creative weirdo cloth as Brad Williams, Jim Jenkins, and Jerry Laybourne. Kriegman contributed content for Mr. Mike's Mondo Video, a 1979 film from Michael O'Donoghue, the first head writer of Saturday Night Live, and this led to Kriegman getting a job writing for Saturday Night Live's sixth season in 1980. Admittedly not the most beloved season of the show, but just saying you worked on SNL at all can be a nice boost to the resume. After that, Kriegman started branching out into children's television, directing, writing, and producing Masterpiece Theater in 1983, a package show of classic Disney shorts for the Disney Channel. He wrote episodes for Alf Tales, Reading Rainbow, and HBO's Encyclopedia, but my personal favorite thing he did pre-Clarissa was when he wrote some of the audio for Dial a Muppet.
Would you like Mommy to call the Muppets? All Mommy has to do is dial 976-2424.
Hi, ho, this is Kermit the Frog. Gonzo, I got that chicken. Hello.
Thank you, dear.
Hiya.
Parents, you'll love to call the Muppets for your children, so kids, ask your parents to dial for you. Dial a Muppet is less than 14 cents a call from the 212-516-718 or 914 area codes. If you love the Muppets, you'll love Dial a Muppet.
Kriegman ended up doing a lot of work for HBO's The Comedy Channel, producing and writing for programs like Higgin Boys and Gruber and The Sweet Life, starring singer and actor Rachel Sweet.
Okay. How was that, Steve? Is that good?
It was great.
Okay. You know, a couple of shows ago we tried this new department called What's Under My Couch.
It was here that Kriegman began developing the ideas for a sitcom, one that pushed the boundaries of the format, and he even pitched a similar, though presumably more adult-oriented show to the Comedy Channel. Sitcoms at that time were pretty boring. They were brilliant, like the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but they were boring. Nothing much ever happened. Characters didn't change much. They were never outlandish. They were pretty locked into their format. And so when I saw I could do these really short, talk-to-camera quick scenes filled with fantasies and still tell a story, and it would still feel like a sitcom, I thought that was really totally cool. But nobody at the Comedy Channel was interested in me doing that, so I took that idea over to Nickelodeon and used it for Clarissa. Kriegman's first Nickelodeon project came in August of 1989 with We'll Be Right Back, a half-hour Nick at Night special featuring classic commercials introduced by various wacky characters.
You've come a long way, baby. Let Hertz push you in the driver's seat. See the USA in your Chevrolet. Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. Don't squeeze the Charmin and take it all off. If you think that Ginzu, Nizu, Gonzo, and Lee Press on nails were nifty, then wait until you get a look at these commercials. Get ready for the products you won't believe they ever made, the products you won't believe you ever needed, the products you won't believe you ever bought, the products you won't believe ever existed. Here they are in the wide world of products.
This got Kriegman's foot in the door of Nickelodeon to pitch a potential television show. But he didn't pitch it with a main character. He didn't have Clarissa. He simply had this quick-paced, fourth-wall-breaking format. To figure out who the main character might actually be, Kriegman was allowed to pore over the collected demographic information Nickelodeon had collected over years of child surveys and focus testing, and settled on having a cool, modern girl as their lead. A girl so cool, it would override the usual boys don't watch girl shows BS you'd hear from most network executives. A female character that didn't fit into the television stereotypes of the time. Clarissa was conceived because television typically suggests that there are only two types of girls: the cheerleader who dates the football player and the nerd with pigtails and glasses. With Clarissa, we've created a character who departs from these conventions, but is still a very real teen. Of course, to get the character right, you have to find the right actor. Melissa Joan Hart was born on April 18, 1976, the eldest child of Paula Hart, who acted as her talent agent as Melissa began getting hired for commercial work at the early age of 4.
Kellogg's Rice Krispies cereal, part of this complete breakfast.
Into your morning.
Commercials led to small parts in shows like The Equalizer and Another World, and in 1986, Hart would get her first starring role in the TV movie Christmas Snow, where she played an adorable orphan girl worried that the candy store she lives in will be turned into a laundromat.
Somebody might come looking for me. Suppose somebody does, and we aren't here anymore.
Do you think about it a lot, Amy? That somebody might come looking for you?
Only sometimes. The thing is, it was the alley here where Ma found me that Christmas. And if somebody comes looking, and we're gone,
what would you do?
Hart also did theater work both on and off Broadway, and in fact, right before doing Clarissa Explains It All, she had performed the one-woman monologue, The Valerie of Now, written by Peter Hedges, in which a young girl deals with getting her first period on her birthday. When Nickelodeon began holding auditions for Clarissa Explains It All in the summer of 1990, Hart credits the play for putting her in the right headspace for a spunky young adult monologuing her problems to the camera. The now 14-year-old Hart came in wearing a pink t-shirt and denim short overalls. She scoffed at New Kids on the Block and nailed her lines. She was exactly what the show was looking for. A test pilot was shot at Nickelodeon Studios in September of 1990. Perhaps just to see if the concept worked, perhaps with intent to air it as a one-off special and see how people took to it like they did with Salute Your Shorts. Alas, it has never seen the light of day, perhaps because Jerry Laybourne discovered that no woman creatives worked on it. If this show about a young girl was to go forward under her watch, there would need to be women among the writers and directors, which is exactly what happened. As for the cast, only Melissa Joan Hart and Jason Zimbler carried over from the pilot. The parents and Sam were recast for the full series. Elizabeth Hess and Joe O'Connor were cast as the Darling parents, and soon realized that this wasn't going to be a traditional family sitcom, where every member of the family has an equal presence. This was Clarissa's show. She would be in just about every scene, and everything was from her point of view. This meant the parents would be a bit less engaging than typical sitcom parents, a little more broad and comedic in character. Each actor took this differently. Elizabeth Hess was always fun. Joe O'Connor, I think, had to understand that this was a kid's show and that the main character was a kid. Joe's a great actor, but after a while you kind of have to take a backseat and understand that it's Clarissa Explains It All, not the Darling family. If there's one significant criticism for the show, especially in relation to its casting, a criticism I am not the first to make, it's that Clarissa Explains It All ended up being very white. Part of that was the format. The majority of the show just never left the Darling household, rarely stepped outside its 5 main leads. There was a little bit of, yeah, let me try to get some Asian people here or some black people here. When we did a high school play or a restaurant scene, you do see more people of color, and I would make sure to open that door a little bit more. But it was very limited down in Florida. A new character would be introduced in Season 4, Clarissa's friend Olivia, played by Nicole Leach, who was definitely a step in the right direction, even with her limited number of appearances.
Well, see, after we got into the show, Ricky went off to her Uncle Bernie's tanning salon and charboiled her backside so bad she can't even walk. Her hip was totally hopped, and now I don't have a partner. You're kidding. I'm never gonna beat Cindy Sparkle now.
Ew, Cindy Sparkle? The only girl who actually Vaselines her teeth so she's always smiling.
Production of the first season went into full swing at Nickelodeon Studios, with Melissa Joan Hart getting a secondary residence in Orlando, working 3 weeks straight, then taking 2 weeks off to go back to New York, and then back to the studio for another 3. Rinse and repeat. Byron Taylor, who had been around since Double Dare, took over production design. David Ellis, who worked on Make the Grade, took over art direction, and Nat Munjoy, who had worked on Sesame Street, took over as set director. Between them, they built a pretty standard sitcom home, then took areas like Clarissa's room and covered everything with art, posters, and little modifications to express Clarissa's personality, like these black checkered squares back there. Actually, those squares were originally going to be purple, but Kriegman had a strict no purple rule, for completely arbitrary reasons. Kriegman had gotten advice from someone in the industry to come up with one stupid rule and enforce it to show everyone who's the boss.
I banned purple. I would never give a reason. And I kind of rationalized it a little bit by saying, I'm trying to appeal to boys and girls. And I said, well, it's got to be all pink and blue. We got to use those as our main colors. And purple throws that off. Bullshit, complete bullshit, right? They just ignored me after a while.
This no purple rule extended to the wardrobe as well. All of Clarissa's bold fashion choices in the first season were thanks to Lisa Lederer. Lederer came from outside the Nickelodeon system, someone Kriegman had handpicked from the New York magazine scene, and reportedly a few people freaked out when she showed up on set with a nose ring. Bum bum bum. I was immersed in the downtown scene in New York. That whole rock and roll punk scene was about redefining the way we looked at what we found attractive and interesting. I used to ride the subways, and they were always this great mashup of kids from different boroughs and different backgrounds, different ethnicities, bringing that whole beautiful panoply of visuals to bear on a train. I paid close attention to what the kids were wearing. Lederer seemed like a very creative and insightful person, who has a shockingly small paper trail. The only show she worked on outside of Clarissa was Stephen Colbert's early sketch comedy show Exit 57, and I couldn't find any of her magazine work. Sadly, she passed away in 2016. Her work in the first season of Clarissa Explains It All is iconic, a wonderful collage of clashing patterns and oddball accessories that shouldn't work on paper but totally do. It's the wardrobe of a kid trying to figure out what kind of person they are.
This is my salute to world leaders look. It's got a bunch of authentic features, like a collar. This is a genuine Mao Zedong collar. Well, it's genuinely like collars from the Mao period. These are real Gandhi trousers. Okay, they're my dad's sweatpants, but they're real replicas. This is an actual Jackie O pillbox hat. Okay, not all pillboxes are perfectly round.
Clarissa!
I've tied it all together with a pin like Barbara Bush wears at Christmas.
Clarissa!
I mean, how can anyone not crave this outstanding ensemble?
Lederer left the show after the first season, and the wardrobe department was taken over by Bruce Anthony Marshall, who would be Nickelodeon's go-to costume designer throughout the 1990s for shows like All That, My Brother and Me, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, Keenan and Kel, and Cousin Skeeter. Clarissa's fashion does get a little tidier in the later seasons, but not by much. It's still identifiably hers. The on-screen graphics were made using a Quantel paint box, a tablet-based graphics workstation that was commonly used for the on-air graphics of news broadcasts. Around that time, one paint box would cost you around $80,000, over $190,000 today. This side of the graphical design was handled by Don St. Mars, who would work with Nickelodeon throughout the 90s on shows like Eureka's Castle, Gullah Gullah Island, and Blue's Clues. These graphics are fun and poppy, while still reading as the scribbles of a young girl.
Little piles of treats here and there around the museum should lure that army of brats away from me. I hate contributing my junk food stash, but it's a small price to pay for peace. Comics. Wave them in front of certain kids and they're silent for hours. But that's not all. Just to make sure, I'm packing the ultimate repulsor. The one item that's sure to keep those kids away from me as long as I keep it firmly in my fists. Soap. Swift, silent, effective. To a little kid, there's nothing more deadly.
The computer game segments were done by Derek Grime, a visual effects artist and animator out of Toronto. He utilized an Amiga, which at the time was the best consumer-grade computer for rendering graphics in real time. The segments were made using Electronic Arts Deluxe Paint 4 and Deluxe Video programs, and I like to imagine Clarissa was using similar programs when making her computer games.
Remember, stay calm and choose wisely.
Stay calm, choose wisely. Choose what?
Okay, here's the idea. You have to climb the ladder and save the girl in the window.
Okay, climb the ladder, save the girl. Hey, that one looks just like you. Get back, alien slug.
The show's iconic Na 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 theme song was composed by Willa Basson and Anthony Battaglia, who had both worked on John Waters' Hairspray, and was performed by, oh hey, Rachel Sweet of Comedy Channel's The Sweet Life. Kriegman would end up writing a 52-page show bible for the writers, and much of Melissa Joan Hart's real life will be folded into the character. Oh, Hart can play the flute? How about an episode where Clarissa is nervous about a flute recital? Oh, Hart had to babysit her younger siblings a lot? Let's do an episode where Clarissa babysits a young Michelle Trachtenberg.
Before things get ugly, there's just one thing I want to say.
Say it, Squirt.
Okay, catch me if you can.
And while we're talking about before they were famous guest actors,
our pizza is good, and you really should try it. In fact, it's great, so go ahead and write about what you ate.
Clarissa Explains It All had quite the writer's room. Highlights include Alexa Young, who would go on to write and produce for Friends, Patricia Marks, who has been a long-term staff writer for The New Yorker, Glenn Eckler, who would co-create MTV's Daria, Doug Petrie, who wrote a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Paul Lieberstein, future showrunner of The Office, and last but not least, Suzanne Collins, the author of The Hunger Games. It wasn't her first Nickelodeon project. She had come over from the production of the original Nick at Night sitcom Hi Honey I'm Home, which was in parallel production with Clarissa for 2 years. And it wouldn't be her biggest role in a Nickelodeon project. She'd end up being the executive story editor for just about all of the mystery files of Shelby Woo. But the juxtaposition between Clarissa Darling and Katniss Everdeen is just so amusing, so just for fun, let's take a look at Collins' episodes. Season 3, Episode 11, Life of Crime, sees Clarissa having anxiety over accidentally walking out of a clothing store without paying for something she was trying on. And she can't tell her parents because the item is a pretty spicy bit of lingerie.
It was a moment of madness, but it looks so totally cool. So Madonna-esque. I mean, I bet she wears these all the time. When she wears anything at all.
Now, don't worry, she never puts this on in the episode. And the show never puts Melissa Joan Hart in anything revealing. The closest we get is this beach number, and that's pretty chaste. Kriegman and the rest of the production were very protective of Hart, even as she got older. No Dan Schneider or Roger Price shenanigans here. But the show also didn't dismiss the fact that this kind of thing often interests young women. The next step up from dressing like a grown-up. It's neither exploitative nor talking down to kids. Neat. Season 4, Episode 3, Commitment, and Season 4, Episode 9, A Little Romance, both deal with Clarissa engaging with romance. In Commitment, Clarissa debates whether or not she should go steady with Clifford, the local tough kid and her on-and-off boyfriend, played by David Eck. Clifford originally became infatuated with Clarissa after she stood up to him to stop his bullying of Ferguson, and now he comes by every once in a while and eats all of the darlings as food.
You wanted to talk.
Yeah. Where have you been lately?
You're the one who blew me off.
Look, Clifford, I didn't want to. I just didn't know how to tell you that I don't want to go steady.
Steady? Steady? Who said anything about going steady?
In A Little Romance, Sam is trying to find the right girl for him and realizes, hey, it just might be Clarissa. But both of them quickly realize that if they were to pursue this, changing their bond from friendship to that of romance, it could jeopardize everything.
I don't know how I feel at all. I don't know if Sam's a friend or something else. I hope he doesn't come around for a while. I need some time to sort my emotions out. I want to be calm, cool, and...
This is the only time the show ever seriously considered if Sam and Clarissa should ever get into a relationship. The rest of the show is proud to have a strong platonic relationship between a girl and a boy. Wait a minute. Clarissa's 2 romance options in the show are the soft neighbor boy and the rough kid from the wrong side of the tracks. Are Sam and Clifford the original Peeta and Gale? Makes you wonder. Season 5, Episode 5, Alter Egos, sees Clarissa adopting the persona of Jade, a cool rocker girl, to sneak into a party, where she meets a cute boy. But the boy is interested mostly in Jade. Clarissa has to keep up appearances if she wants to keep seeing him.
Wow. Jade, I can't believe your parents let you get a tattoo.
Well, they had their objections. What if you get ink poisoning? What if the kids call you rat girl? What if your prom dress is sleeveless? Right, like I'm gonna be wearing a prom dress.
I'd argue this is the weakest of Collins' episodes, with a very basic, just be yourself message we've seen 1,000 times before. Finally, Season 5, Episode 8, Janet and Clarissa Inc. Clarissa and her mother accidentally invent a snack that bounces like a rubber ball and decide to sell it. But it turns out that the dynamics of parent and child and the dynamics of business partners are not entirely compatible, resulting in a big Star Wars parody.
Join me and together we can rule the snack food world as mother and daughter. Come with me. It is the only way.
The show opted for a lot of these kind of cutaway gags, recasting the Darling family in Star Trek or the Sonny and Cher show or a silent Rudolph Valentino film. This is one of those shows where the adults making it will throw in pop culture references just for them, even if 99.9% of kids won't get it. I mean, yeah, most kids will get Star Wars, but far fewer will know that this scene is riffing on Citizen Kane. Clarissa Explains It All had a very small pool of directors. Only 7 over the show's 5 seasons and 65 episodes. The most prolific were Chuck Vinson, who had come out of The Cosby Show, and Liz Plonka, who had later gone to direct over 500 episodes of Late Night with Conan O'Brien. Both of them directed 24 episodes each, and the show maintained a fairly healthy ratio of male directors to female directors, per Jerry Laybourne's request. The show just had a killer team of creatives, and it showed in the final product. Its premiere got solid reviews. People magazine gave Clarissa a B+, describing it as a post-Pee-wee sitcom. It was definitely format-breaking, with its use of cutaways and fourth wall breaks, and just a general hesitation to even be perceived as a sitcom at all. Like, if you haven't watched the show in a while, do you even remember that it has a laugh track? I forgot all about it before rewatching the show for this video.
Clarissa, I want you to know that we Funsworths have a tradition of always getting what we want, no matter what.
Well, we darlings have a tradition of always throwing out what we don't want. See you later. Oh, one more thing. Stop sending the gifts, I'm running out of room.
Perhaps your house could use a new wing. Ta-ta.
It's just so quiet and crops up so sporadically, and nobody acts around it. You don't see the cast do that classic sitcom pause between each joke. The laugh track is only there because it's sitcom tradition or some such thing. We had to use a light laugh track on the show because that was how multiple camera sitcoms were produced in those days. People expected a laugh track, and it's what Nickelodeon wanted. Clarissa Explains It All was a unique sitcom, but it was a sitcom. That's what Nickelodeon wanted, and that put it in conversation with other sitcoms. For example, the Darling family is something of a 1990s version of the Keaton family from Family Ties. You have the two ex-hippie liberal parents, one of whom is an architect, and you have the young Republican brother who's always looking to make a dishonest buck. Kriegman has named Alex, Michael J. Fox's character from Family Ties, as a direct influence on Ferguson. The Darlings are, on paper, a very traditional sitcom family. It's Clarissa that pushes that formula in a different direction. The most successful sitcom led by a young girl prior to this was Punky Brewster, and you can maybe see a few parallels there with Punky's colorful fashion sense, but that character was half Clarissa's age, and her stories were largely driven by precociousness and innocence. She's a good little girl that listens to her elders. While Clarissa isn't a rebel against her parents, she wants and has a good relationship with them, she is nonetheless driven by independence. For example, Clarissa is really invested in cars, because having a car and being able to drive is perhaps the most significant symbol of young adult independence in the modern world.
Clarissa Marie Darling, you want me to work the late shift at 7-Eleven?
Only a couple of months.
Just so you can buy some magical creature?
Mom, a gremlin is a car, Mom. I need a car.
We get stories about having your own sense of fashion, even if your parents think it's too out there. Stories about getting your first job, and by extension, stories about discovering what you want to do as your career. Clarissa eventually settles with journalism. There are stories about applying yourself to extracurricular activities. And there's one episode I have to spotlight, even if there's no good place in the script for it. Season 3, Episode 3, Poetic Justice, in which Clarissa has to write a poem for school, and ends up trying to pass off something completely written by her computer as her own.
We're witnessing a powerful mind at work here. A multi-megabyte mind, to be exact.
No blood, no sweat, no tears.
And it's done! Poetry of the future.
So let's hear it.
Gray cube. Rectangular light. Cantilevered rainbows. Sunshine, open, close, glass. Square sunset. Outside, outside, outside. Sunset inside. Daffodils.
Yes, Clarissa Explains It All predicted people using AI to strangle the life out of the creative arts. Clarissa's drive for independence made her a perfect fit for Nickelodeon's kids rule ethos that was really getting honed in the early 90s. More than that, though, I think Clarissa Explains It All was something the general American television viewer was craving for a while. One show Clarissa is inevitably compared to is Blossom, another sitcom about a young girl in her early teens with a quirky fashion sense, maturing and going to school, with the occasional pop culture reference fantasy sequence. Blossom is a bit more of a traditional network sitcom, lacking the fourth wall breaks and animations of Clarissa, instead laying on the sweet sentimentalities. But the comparison is still apt. Both shows were in parallel production with each other. Clarissa premiering a few months after Blossom, too close for anyone to even consider suggesting one show ripped off the other. Rather, both shows were responding to a certain underserved young female demographic. Tween and early teenage girls didn't have a lot of programming that represented them as capable, fun, complex, and not there to be a love interest to the main male lead. We were starved for shows like this. There's even evidence that Clarissa Explains It All may have had appeal to older demographics for that reason, perhaps as a way to catch up on the kind of shows that people didn't get to have when they were younger. I found evidence of at least one university email mailing list to discuss Clarissa Explains It All, started sometime prior to August of 1992. Yes, Clarissa was being watched on college campuses. Initially airing twice on Sundays at 12:30 and 6:30 p.m., Season 1 ran for 13 episodes and wrapped up on June 15, 1991, and was quickly renewed for a second season. Sort of. Technically speaking, Clarissa Explains It All has 5 seasons of 13 episodes each, but it might be more accurate to say that the show had one 13-episode season, Nickelodeon liked what they saw, and then told the production to just keep making episodes until we tell you to stop. Every one of these later so-called seasons ended a week before the next one started. For example, Season 2 technically ended on September 12, 1992, and Season 3 began on September 19, 1992, 1 week later. Production was ongoing, and new episodes were very frequent. There are 3 big reasons for this kind of production schedule. Well, one big reason, capitalism, but from 3 different angles.
Hold the pickles, hold the lettuce, and a double order of Snick. Snick. This week on Snick, take the 4-step plan for self-improvement. First, explore true individuality with Clarissa. Second, settle financial matters at the roundhouse. Third, identify those problems which originate in infancy with Ren and Stimpy. And finally, check out alternative lifestyles on Are You Afraid of the Dark? You'll feel better in no time. So take a seat on the big orange couch and Snick.
First off, on August 15th, 1992, Clarissa Explains It All became the premiere program of Snick, Nickelodeon's new Saturday evening block aimed at a teenage audience, who were being very underserved during the Saturday evening 8 to 10 p.m. time slot. Like, Snick's biggest competitor for that demographic during that time was Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. Clarissa was part of Snick's original lineup, which also included Roundhouse, The Ren and Stimpy Show, and Are You Afraid of the Dark, in that order. With how it was catering to its particular demographic, reruns would be a detriment. It was best to have at least one of these shows airing a new episode every week. Roundhouse was chomping at the bit to move production to California. Are You Afraid of the Dark was only a Nickelodeon co-production and stuck with the usual season orders with month-long gaps between seasons. And The Ren and Stimpy Show was infamous for its episode delays. That left Clarissa Explains It All to be Nick's capital R reliable show, a reliable production schedule, a reliable source of new episodes for Snick when the other shows couldn't provide, and a reliable young star in Melissa Joan Hart. A second reason for the production schedule was that the show was filmed at Nickelodeon Studios at Universal Studios, Florida. Nickelodeon's deal with Universal was that they could have this dedicated studio space, but it also had to function as an attraction. This meant that Nickelodeon Studios had to be filming something, or at least giving off the illusion they were filming something, just about every day Universal Studios was open. Clarissa Explains It All helped with that, with a cast working grueling 70-hour weeks, and steps in the production that would usually take place in an office room or something were taking place in the cold studio. My work week began on Saturday night when I read the latest scripts given to me on Friday. Then with the cast, director of the week, writers, and producers, I spent Sundays at the table reading for that week's episodes in our enormous, dark and damp soundstage. The good lights didn't go on, and the thermostat wasn't regulated until we started shooting on Wednesday. I often got strep throat and colds from the stage, and there was never time to heal completely. Nickelodeon put the show in what nowadays we would recognize as crunch hours, and that's not a good thing at any time, but especially when involving child actors. It's not among the most abusive productions we've covered in Knacks. The cast and crew themselves got along very well, but Nickelodeon could have been a lot better in supporting them. And speaking of support, that brings us to reason 3, contract negotiations. How television has traditionally worked is that, if a network wants to order more episodes of a show, typically in those periods between seasons, then contracts are going to be renegotiated. The actors and creatives that made the show successful will often ask for more money because they are more valuable to the production. This strange, is it 4 seasons or is it 1 season setup made these kind of negotiations difficult. It's similar to something you often see with streaming these days, where a streaming service will order a certain number of episodes as a single season, then split it up and present it as multiple seasons, giving the show the prestige of having multiple seasons without having to pay renegotiated contracts. This led to a lot of confusion from the cast and crew. Lead casting director Rich Ross and I would be sitting in our offices making up numbers to pay these kids. What would we offer Melissa a 3rd year for Clarissa? Is $150 an episode enough of a bump? We were making it up. There was no template. We were completely on our own, non-union, and there was no big brother to ask questions of. Once the contracts were signed, we went ahead and did it. In terms of negotiating what we made, our contract was so confusing our agents had a hard time of understanding it. Nickelodeon has always done a wonderful job of making it seem like they were some benign, almost non-profit. It's really brilliant marketing. It just becomes, gosh darn it, they're really interested in kids. It's important to remember that, even at their best, Nickelodeon was and is a major entertainment company looking to make money, in both legit and backhanded ways, just like all major entertainment companies. While they were still stepping a little gingerly around merchandising their shows, Clarissa Explains It All did get a few items, including select VHS releases, a board game, and a couple of CDs. There was Clarissa and the Straitjackets, This Is What Na Na Means, a little pop rock album where Clarissa starts her own little garage band.
This is a list of what I like. Lincoln Logs, Picasso, the ocean when it's green, cross-eyed cats, mud, movies where people are insane, things I know a lot about, and things I can't explain.
A little more odd was a recording of Peter and the Wolf, narrated by Melissa Joan Hart in character as Clarissa. Yeah, I don't know. For a handful of years, everyone just had it in their heads to make novelty Peter and the Wolf albums. Weird Al and Wendy Carlos teamed up to do one once. More important than merchandise, though, was the fact that Melissa Joan Hart was Nickelodeon's first homegrown star, and Clarissa was Nickelodeon's first main character. Pretty much all of Nickelodeon's original programming up to that point had been ensemble shows, large casts without one main lead. Both Hey Dude and Salute Your Shorts lost major characters during their runs, and kept chugging along just fine. That changed with Clarissa Explains It All, and the fact that Nickelodeon's first main character was a girl was not insignificant. From this point forward, you could reliably find female-led shows on Nick. Clarissa crawled so Carly could run.
We really pioneered getting strong, interesting girls at the center on TV, and boys loved Clarissa. It had a higher percentage of boys watching it than Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So, we were just, ornery and had to disprove all the broadcast myths.
Nickelodeon didn't utilize Melissa Joan Hart as much as they would for future Nickelodeon stars, not at first anyway, though there were some odd promotions here and there. One of the very last things Hart did before Clarissa Explains It All ended wasn't actually for Nickelodeon, but oddly enough, Nickelodeon UK.
Nick, half two for you to win a superb prize, and that prize would be a date with you.
Me. Yep, we'll go eat, shop, hang out, whatever.
And I'm not allowed to enter.
Nope, no one from Nickelodeon. Sorry.
Melissa, blink 3 times if you want someone to get you out of there. Nickelodeon actually utilized Hart in promotions more after Clarissa Explains It All, with her fame being quadrupled with the success of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Clarissa Explains It All's last new episode, aptly titled The Last Episode, aired on October 1st, 1994, which saw Clarissa being offered a post-high school internship for a big New York City newspaper, and everyone pondering just where the future is going to take them.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm gonna miss the little dweeb. In fact, there's a lot of things I'm gonna miss. I guess I'm gonna miss everything, but mostly everyone.
I be homesick when I haven't even left home yet? But I guess there comes a time when you finally have to say goodbye. But maybe this isn't goodbye. Maybe this is just a new beginning. You never know.
Clarissa Explains It All ended for the reason a whole lot of Nickelodeon shows end: the child cast grew up. Melissa Joan Hart went from 14 to 17 through the show's production, and the character grew with her. We feel like we've done just about everything we can do with that character. Well, you might have felt that, Nickelodeon, but Mitchell Kriegman felt differently. He wanted to continue Clarissa's adventures, have her character grow up in real time, like, say, the kids from My Three Sons, this time as a full-fledged network sitcom. CBS commissioned a pilot for a show called Clarissa Now, which saw Clarissa taking that internship and integrating herself into the Big Apple.
You don't think I can find a story he would like?
Let me put it this way. No.
Well, that's just fine. You know, I don't need your encouragement. I don't need your support. In fact, I don't need anything at all from you. I need your pen.
I actually did a full Knacks sample platter on this pilot if you want to learn more. There's a link in the description below. Without the fourth wall antics and animations of the original series, Clarissa Now didn't quite have that same charm, and the pilot was never picked up. Nickelodeon would continue to air Clarissa reruns up until August 19, 2001, then moved the show over to Noggin for their The End programming block, where it ran until 2003. It since aired sporadically on Teen Nick, a cornerstone show for the Nickelodeon nostalgia crowd, its most recent broadcast being on April 19, 2020. No doubt it'll crop up again as long as there's millennials wishing for the 90s. Kriegman stuck around Nickelodeon for a little bit longer, writing for shows like The Ren and Stimpy Show, Rocko's Modern Life, and Rugrats, before his allegiances switched back to the Disney Channel, where he created a little show you might have heard of called Bear in the Big Blue House, which would arguably eclipse his role as the Clarissa guy. Not that Kriegman still wasn't invested in Clarissa. 2015 would see the publication of Things I Can't Explain, a Clarissa novel, a, for all intents and purposes, canon continuation of Clarissa Explains It All and Clarissa Now, with Clarissa as an unemployed woman in her mid-20s trying to survive New York City, the darling parents separated, and Ferguson in jail for embezzling from the Russian mob. I read the book for this video, and it's not bad at all. But it's also pure Kriegman, with none of the additional writers, directors, and Melissa Joan Hart's performance to filter it. It very much reads cis-het guy doing his best to write from a woman's perspective, but not quite getting there. Word on a possible revival of the franchise started floating around in 2018, with Melissa Joan Hart attached to reprise her role as Clarissa, now a middle-aged mother. This didn't happen, with Hart confirming the idea was no longer in consideration in 2022. However, Nickelodeon didn't quite give up on the idea of former Nickelodeon child star playing a mom in a sitcom, with Alex Mack herself, Larissa Oleynik, playing a mother on Aaron and Aaron in 2023. A Clarissa revival seems unlikely, though who knows, maybe we'll get another novel. The first season of Clarissa Explains It All ended up on DVD for the ill-fated Nickelodeon Rewind collection, a line meant to publish nostalgic Nick classics, also releasing the first 2 seasons of The Adventures of Pete and Pete before all future releases ended up in perpetual hiatus. No other seasons of Clarissa have ended up on DVD, but you can find almost all of the episodes on streaming on Paramount Plus and Amazon Prime, and the episodes that aren't up there for whatever reason have been preserved by tape traders and file sharing. It's an easy show to access, and one very important for Nickelodeon going forward. On top of just being a very good show, it was the testing ground for Nick on how they would make children's sitcoms. It proved to them that these sitcoms could find an audience, and these sitcoms would come to define the channel as much as animation in the years to come. Hey Dude and Salute Your Shorts were more ambitious and cinematic, sure, but the era of My Brother and Me, Kenan and Kel, Drake and Josh, iCarly and Victorious starts here. Meanwhile, the Explains It All heart of the show, with its cheeky fourth wall breaks and visual design, can be seen in programs like Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, which for my money is the nearest thing to Clarissa in spirit. Clarissa proved unambiguously that girl-led shows would be successful on the channel, opening the door to programs like The Secret World of Alex Mack, The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo, The Amanda Show, Taina, and True Jackson VP. And it brought in a lot of talent that would go on to define the look and feel of 90s Nick. I would argue that Clarissa Explains It All is, at least in part, the genesis point of maybe a third of Nickelodeon's original output post-1991. If this show hadn't come to be, or if it had flopped, we'd probably be looking at a very different channel. And it didn't flop because it was good. Clarissa Explains It All was hip, it was new, it was funny, it had a charismatic lead in Melissa Joan Hart, and it respected its young audience. It looked at the world the way a kid might. The show rolled its eyes and said, yeah, no, I get it, it's weird. It promoted independence and autonomy in young people, while also not shying away from how hard that can be. It respected your intelligence. And in case you were wondering, yeah, that's why it's episode 100.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
Next time, Nickelodeon upgrades a series of shorts into a series of specials, and from those, a legendary piece of 90s television is born. Today's research shout-out goes to Melissa Explains It All, Tales from My Abnormally Normal Life, Melissa Joan Hart's 2013 autobiography. I managed to piece together a lot of different interviews and articles for this video, but if you want one solid book about Clarissa Explains It All's production from the actor's perspective, this is definitely the way to go. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to support Knacks and other Pop Arena projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. Every dollar goes to production values, research materials, and, a new apartment. My current apartment has major flood damage. You can also support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, hitting that bell icon for notifications, leaving a comment, following me on social media, sending a one-time donation through PayPal or Coffee, and sharing Knacks with all your friends. Thank you again, and remember, Black Lives Matter.